In July 1944, as World War II raged on, representatives from 44 Allied nations gathered in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. Their mission was to create a new global economic system to ensure financial stability and prevent the chaos of past economic crises. The system aimed to promote international cooperation, avoid competitive devaluations, and foster trade and growth. It established rules and institutions like the IMF and World Bank to govern monetary relations and support global recovery. Nations adopted fixed exchange rates tied to the US dollar, which was pegged to gold, balancing national autonomy with global stability. This bold experiment in cooperation laid the foundation for decades of economic growth and integration. At the heart of the Bretton Woods system was the dollar-gold standard, a mechanism designed to stabilize international monetary relations. Under this system, the US dollar was directly convertible to gold at a fixed rate of $35 per ounce. Other currencies were pegged to the dollar, creating a fixed exchange rate regime. This setup provided a stable environment for international trade and investment by reducing exchange rate uncertainty. Countries agreed to maintain their currency values within a narrow band around a fixed rate to the US dollar. If a country's currency fell outside this band, it was required to intervene in the foreign exchange market, often by buying or selling dollars. This mechanism was intended to prevent competitive devaluations and promote a stable international trading system. The US, with its vast gold reserves, was the linchpin of this monetary order, providing the necessary liquidity for global economic growth. Maintaining these fixed exchange rates required countries to adopt consistent monetary and fiscal policies. Governments could not freely print money or run large deficits without risking a balance of payments crisis. The system imposed a discipline that some countries found challenging, as it limited their ability to respond to domestic economic conditions. Despite these constraints, the Bretton Woods system facilitated an unprecedented era of economic expansion and trade liberalization. However, the reliance on the dollar-gold standard also meant that the US had to maintain sufficient gold reserves to back the dollars in circulation. This requirement became increasingly difficult as global demand for dollars grew, and US economic policies sometimes conflicted with the need to maintain the gold peg. This tension would eventually contribute to the system's breakdown. The Bretton Woods system began to unravel in the late 1960s and early 1970s as economic conditions and political pressures strained its foundations. One of the main reasons for its collapse was the growing imbalance in the US balance of payments. As the world's reserve currency issuer, the US faced increasing deficits, leading to a loss of confidence in the dollar's convertibility to gold. The system could not accommodate the economic realities of the time. The rising costs of the Vietnam War and domestic social programs contributed to the US budget deficits, putting pressure on the dollar. Countries holding large dollar reserves began to question whether the US could maintain its gold peg. This uncertainty led to a wave of speculative attacks on the dollar, as countries sought to convert their dollar holdings into gold. The US, unable to meet the growing demand for gold, faced a crisis of confidence. In August 1971, President Richard Nixon announced the suspension of the dollar's convertibility to gold, effectively ending the dollar-gold standard. This decision, known as the Nixon shock, marked the beginning of the end for the Bretton Woods system. Without the gold peg, the fixed exchange rate regime collapsed, and countries gradually moved to floating exchange rates. The shift to floating rates allowed for more flexibility, but also introduced new challenges in managing international economic relations. The collapse of the Bretton Woods system marked a significant shift in the global economic landscape. It ushered in a new era of financial globalization, with increased capital mobility and more dynamic exchange rate systems. While the Bretton Woods system had its flaws, it laid the groundwork for the interconnected global economy we see today and provided valuable lessons for managing international economic cooperation.